for you. $14 that is. That's how much a pickup truck owner saves every time they go to the pump here, says the government of Manitoba. That's thanks to the 14-cent per liter gas tax holiday that's been in place since January. And now that holiday has been extended until the end of the year by the province, and that's music to the ears of Gage Hobrecht, the Prairie Director with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, who's with us here in studio. Hello there, Gage.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to chatting with you. I'm also looking forward to hearing from listeners. So we're going to open up the phone line here. We want to hear, what do you think about the extension of this gas tax holiday? How has it impacted your life so far? How has it helped your budget? What do you think about what it might mean for Manitoba's budget? Would you like to see it stick around, maybe even longer, or do you think it's time to bring the tax back? So give us a call. I'm sure there's been lots of opinions. I remember when we opened up the phone lines when they first announced it, lots of people have thoughts about this, and we're happy to hear from you. Give us a call. The phone lines are open. 204-780-0893 is the number to call. That's 204-780-0893. And if you're not much of a talker and you'd rather text, you can text us too, 204-588-7355. That's 204-588-7355. Now, Gage, you've been advocating for this holiday to be extended and even actually made permanent as well. So why do you think eliminating the gas tax entirely is the best move for Manitoba?
Well, it's one of the easiest ways that the government can save people money. Unlike some types of affordability schemes, it doesn't take any more bureaucrats. It doesn't take sending a check to taxpayers from the government. One day the government's charging 14 cents on gas. One day they're not, and that means Manitobans can save. And, when we look at it at a wholesale, in Manitoba, if you're a family making around $75,000 a year, even with the gas tax cut savings, you're still paying more taxes than a similar family in Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario, or British Columbia. So it's kind of up to the government to make sure that they're helping keep Manitoba as affordable as possible. And one way to do that is to have Broadway take less money out of your pocket.
And yourself, I know you kind of split your time between Manitoba and Saskatchewan. What have you noticed in terms of the impact it's had on your pocketbooks? Because you're kind of spending a lot of time driving.
No, exactly. When I cross over the Saskatchewan border and I get to Brandon, I notice that gas is about 14 cents cheaper than it is in Saskatchewan. So, when I head home later today back to Saskatchewan, make sure I fill up in Manitoba and get those savings.
Yeah. We want to hear from you. Give us a call if you have any thoughts. 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Or you can text us 204-588-7355. Are you on board with what Gage has to say, or maybe you think otherwise? I know there are critics of the gas tax holiday, like the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. They note that the cut means $340 million less in revenue this year for the province of Manitoba, which, we're not necessarily flush with cash as a province right now. We're facing nearly a $2 billion deficit. And, the new NDP, well, it's not quite new, I guess, anymore. The NDP government is promising to do things like, fix healthcare, balance the budget. So what do you make of that critique that, this is revenue that could be used otherwise?
So to regular people, right, $340 million is a lot of money. And it is a lot of money. But we look at the billions of dollars that the government spends. The total gas tax cut revenue for an entire year, as it'll be now, is only 1.4% of total government revenue. So when we look at the deficit, this wouldn't move in that path. The government would still be spending too much money. So it's not up to taxpayers to give the premier more money to spend and go into deficit. It's up to the government to find ways to save money and then keep life more affordable.
Right. Are you concerned at all that, cutting this means that the government might have to raise taxes elsewhere? Like, how concerned are you about that?
Well, I think that if the premier did that, it would be probably the worst move possible and make no one happy, right? Because the reason that taxpayers are so excited about the gas tax cut is because they're paying less in taxes overall. So if the premier went back and raised taxes somewhere else, it would simply be shifting the burden, and we'd have no more money in our pockets.
Give us a call. How do you feel at the pump? Does the gas tax break make a difference for you? 204-780-0893 is the number to call. 204-780-0893. You could also text us 204-588-7355. Now, Wab Kinew, Premier Wab Kinew, hinted a month ago that fiscal restraint is coming, right? As someone who generally advocates for less taxes, do you think that, it's just inevitable that somewhere else, they're going to have to, I kind of ask you how concerned you are, but, that, or do you think that we can literally, it's all just restraint in spending? We'll get there to balancing that budget.
I think it definitely is. The Premier's even said it's a balancing act about investing and going to these tax cuts. Because, of course, the government can't just spend money on everything. There simply isn't enough money in the pot. So they have to look at the important things that actually matter to Manitobans and then look at cutting on the wasteful stuff. So, we saw in the last budget, the government announced about $60 million worth of new corporate welfare programs. So taking Manitobans' money and handing it out to corporations. One of the easiest ways the government can move is say that Manitobans' taxpayer dollars should be used for Manitoban programs, not for corporations. And that be able to extend the gas tax cut at least 2 months just by slamming that one program.
Is that the main thing? Is there any other place you see that the government could cut to find more places to balance the budget, which seems like it's going to be a tall order?
There's a couple things on there. We've seen that since the government has come in, they've hired about $40 million worth of new government employees, and that's an annual cost. So when the government's looking at stuff like that, they need to find out whether or not the people they're hiring, it is worth to keep that in the government for the long term, because it's not just the $40 million this year, because everybody's hired now, it's going to be $40 million next year, and they came in inheriting a huge deficit from the last government. So they have to find a way to look for savings in this aspect and not simply spend more money.
You think they should cut some government jobs is the move?
I think that's possible. We saw, I don't have the exact numbers right now, but there was a couple hundred clerks that were hired for this position, which, compared to things like, and there's only 2 doctors on that list of that 40 million, somewhere around there. So when you're balancing that out, of course, healthcare is really important. So you think, should we spend this more money on doctors versus the clerk number, for example?
We have Maureen on the line. Hello there, Maureen. Oh, I think we just have to. I just got to get the phone here. 1 second. I put it 1 second here. Welcome to live radio, everybody. There you go. Hi there, Maureen.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry, that's my fault. I didn't bring the phone close to me.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah, Maureen, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think this is a very poor use of our tax dollars, and I'm quite disappointed in the Tax Federation for thinking that it's a good use. The way this tax savings works is that the more you drive, the more relief you're getting. So we're actually, with this, encouraging driving, when from a climate perspective, we should be reducing the amount that people drive. And as well, I would think, well, I agree, and I think most people would like to see, and I would hope the Federation would like to see our tax dollars help the most vulnerable people. And the most vulnerable people, the people with the least income, don't even have vehicles, so they're not seeing any direct savings from this. So very disappointed that the government chose to do this.
Gage, I imagine you've got a response. What do you make of Maureen's criticism?
No, for sure. Thanks for that, Maureen. Well, I'd say there's 2 things. In lots of examples, especially in rural Manitoba, it isn't a choice whether to drive or not. People have to go to work every day. They have to take their kids to any types of sports practice. Sometimes they can't afford to buy a brand new vehicle that's better on gas. So making the savings in there is a good way to increase that affordability. And, Manitobans seem to think that way too. We did a poll earlier this summer that saw that 71% of Manitobans want the government to extend the gas tax cut, which they just did. And I think the Premier is right to follow that poll when it's saying that a clear majority of Manitobans want to keep saving money.
I'll also say we got a text as well there, Gage, from Sylvie, who said, "I'm disappointed the province extended the tax gas holiday. This will not shift our behavior on using less fossil fuels." So similar to what Maureen has to say. The money could be used to help lower income population, since many don't own vehicles. Let's invest in public transportation instead. And Maureen, while we still got you on the line, have you noticed a difference for yourself in your pocketbooks, since this gas tax was lifted?
Well, and I try as much as possible to ride my bike to places or to rent to places. I do use a vehicle when I have to make longer trips out of the city, but I'm not one of the most vulnerable in society. And so to me, if I have a vehicle, I should be paying my taxes to drive that vehicle, because it costs a heck of a lot to keep roads in enough condition for all those vehicles. And so I think those of us who are driving should be paying for that.
Maureen, thanks so much for your perspective on this. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
And what do you make? Because the reality is, at the end of the day, the government needs to collect taxes. to pay for things like roads, and maybe if we are incentivizing more driving through, like kind of Maureen argues through this, are we just kind of leading ourselves into this kind of cycle of just constantly needing to spend more money on things like roads, or maybe we could be spending more money on things like keep this gas tax to disincentivize things and spend it on transportation. And maybe that is there an argument there that it is a better use of our tax dollars? It could save us in the long run.
Well, I think the greatest thing to look at, again, is how much tax that Manitobans are paying. The provincial government spends, more than $20 billion a year, and that comes from Manitoba families that pay, on average, a lot more tax than similar families in Western Canada. So the government has a lot of money to spend, but it's about petitioning where they should make it on those priorities. An extra $340 million, instead of going back to Manitobans' pockets, isn't going to solve all these problems. So you have to look at the government saying, where is the rest of these $20 billion going that we're not making progress on these things that people think are important?
Mm-hmm. We've heard from Maureen. We've heard from Sylvie as well. You can keep the conversation going. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. We heard from Maureen. I am curious to hear from folks who might have to drive every day. What are you hearing? Is this incentivizing you to drive more, or is this something that's really made a difference for you and your family, or not? I would love to hear from you. We are approaching a year since the NDP took the reins. And what have you noticed in terms of you are clearly for this policy? Are there any other ways that they're spending money that you are concerned about?
Well, one of the programs that I think the Premier has a good system to change is over the last 2 years, the government has spent about $360,000 on electric vehicle chargers sponsored by the province. Mm-hmm. And that could be a fine way to spend money. But the problem is that the government never checked on if people were using them. So I think a big point going forward is that when the government commits to spend money on a project, it should be in a way that makes it so they're actually getting value for what they're doing.
Okay. I finally got the phone here, so thanks for that. We do have a call waiting for us. We have Michael here online too. Hello there, Michael.
Hi there.
Hey, tell us, I understand you're a driver. How yourself, what have you noticed about the impact the gas tax holiday has had on you?
Well, I guess I would consider myself maybe mid to lower income, and but I do have to drive. Prices of gas. I've moved across provinces a little bit and drive between provinces. I haven't noticed a huge difference. And personally, I guess if I knew that this money would have been going towards, like I said, climate incentives or something like that, I guess I would be willing to pay that extra because we don't really have control over the prices. Sometimes we'll see them skyrocket. So to know that they're taking away perhaps extra income for the coffers, I guess, in my opinion, I would have rather pay the extra because it wouldn't have broken the bank for me.
Really appreciate your input there, Michael. Actually, the phone line is kind of blowing up a little bit now. We're going to go to Greg as well, who's standing by. Hi there, Greg.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What's your thoughts on the gas tax holiday?
Well, I have a couple of questions. First of all is, where's the $300 million that they're not collecting? Where's it going to come from now? It's got to come from somewhere.
Right.
Or they got to cut services. And the second question is, how are they going to manage the end of the tax holiday? On January 1st, are they going to suddenly say, okay, the price of gas is going to go up 20 cents?
Right.
Makes me think they either didn't plan it or it's not going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, and as far as governing by poll, if a government wants to govern by poll, we don't really need leaders, do we? We just do whatever the poll says. Mm-hmm. I'm sure their poll, with respect to everybody wanting the gas tax to disappear, didn't add the question of, well, what do you want to replace it with?
Right.
So let's have them answer those questions. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks there, Greg. I was going to follow up. I mean, there is, I guess, the political motivation, the polls so far. How concerned are you that, that they might lift the gas tax in January, and how that might impact your advocacy there, Gage?
I think it would be unfortunate. We'll obviously see in 3 months where things are at. The government's supposed to be putting forward their fiscal update sometime soon as well. But from our perspective for taxpayers, the longer the taxpayers can keep saving money, the better. Over the course of this year, if you're a family and you have 2 cars and you fill up once every 2 weeks, so you're not driving the most, but you're also still getting out there, you could save about $600 a year from what we see this. And kind of talking about the change in prices, of course, we see gas prices change about once every couple of days, going everywhere depending on what's going on. But since the gas tax has been cut on January 1st, Manitoba has had the lowest fuel prices in the country. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because we're not paying that provincial gas tax here.
We've got Dan on the line here as well. Hi there, Dan.
Hey, how are you?
Good. What's your thoughts on the gas tax holiday being extended?
Well, can we start by elaborating here, clearing things up, because the tax that you're talking about in question that we have a holiday from is the carbon tax, right? So gas, if you look at it on a pie chart, is already taxed to the hilt. So getting this tax thrown on us and then having a holiday from it, like we're really where we were at 4 or 5 years ago. Because with all honesty, you call it a gas tax, but it's not. Because gas fuel is already taxed. Like, that's not going anywhere. What we have a holiday from is the carbon tax. It's Trudeau's answer to everything is taxing fuel. And this was supposed to go towards finding ways of helping the environment. Now, this money now is thrown into a general fund, and I think this should just go away, and they should find a better way to spend money. Because honestly, this gas tax holiday, it's smoke and mirrors. Basically, it's the carbon tax that they just threw on us that we're having a holiday from. So, people are forgetting that gas and diesel is already taxed. And it's like more than half of what we pay is tax on our fuel.
Thanks for that, Dan. Gage, what are your thoughts on what Dan has to say there?
So I think that's kind of an important point, actually. So when we look at Manitoba in general, about 30% of the pump price without the provincial gas tax is other types of taxes. And, what we've seen from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is he wants to continue to hike his own carbon tax, which is charged to gas. Right now, it's about 17 cents a liter. So I think Dan is right that basically Premier Kinew offsetting that with his own thing still makes gas about 3 cents more expensive than it would be with no taxes. But I think that's a good point when we move into the end of this gas tax holiday. Only a couple months after that, in April, the Prime Minister is going to hike his carbon tax to 21 cents a liter. So if we're looking at January 1st, and Manitobans are hit with a 14 cents per liter gas tax hike from the province, and then a 5 cents gas tax hike from the federal government only a couple of months later, that's going to put it in your pocketbooks.
And Dan, while we got you on the line, I'm curious to yourself, what have you noticed the impact it's had on you, the gas tax holiday? Has it had any impact or not?
I go through a lot of fuel myself. I drive semi-truck, so the price of diesel is higher than the price of gasoline, which is preposterous anyway. So it makes a difference in everybody's bottom line. Like even my own personal vehicle, I used to be able to fill my truck with $80, and now I'm looking at about $120, $130 every time I fill. It's making a huge difference.
That's really helpful for your perspective. Thanks so much. Really appreciate that, Dan.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah. We also got one text as well from Dave. We're going to be wrapping it up shortly here. And thanks for everyone who's called and texted so far. The tax holiday, he says, is short-sighted. Forward-thinking is installing EV chargers. I know you were talking about that before there, Gage, but there's ways to do that well and not, like you were saying. So he says I can communicate I can commute on renewable energy. So he thinks that's where we should really be putting our money in the long term. Thanks for that text there, Dave, and thanks for everyone who've called so far today. Before I let you go there, Gage, any final thoughts in terms of where you'd like to see the price of gas go and the way the government handles it?
Well, I'd just like to see the Premier do as much as he can, obviously, to make life more affordable for Manitobans. I think one of the biggest problems with how the extension has been handled is we only heard about it, 4 days before it was scheduled to expire. So when we get to the end of this next 3 months, the Premier shouldn't leave taxpayers waiting for as long as he did. Having people have to plan whether or not they're going to be paying more for gas on Monday is an important thing. So there should be enough time for the Premier to say, okay, we're going to keep you saving money, or we decided not to. But there needs to be something that shows we're making sure you're not waiting with bated breath until the last moment.
Well, Gage, thanks so much for joining us, and safe travels back to Saskatchewan today.
Thanks for having me.
That is Gage Haubrick, the Prairie Director with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.
Thank you for watching the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest breaking news and top stories, download the CBC News app.